You've outgrown their chaos. Here's why you feel absolutely nothing now. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. If you've ever wondered why the chaos that once consumed you now feels like a distant echo, this video may hold the answer your soul has been waiting for. Growth isn't always loud. It's often quiet, detached, and rooted in deep inner peace. On Spiritual Wisdom, we explore how emotional neutrality isn't numbness. It's a powerful sign that you've evolved beyond old patterns and reclaimed your energy. What have you recently outgrown that once triggered you? Drop it in the comments, and let's start a conversation about self-mastery, transformation, and the profound wisdom that comes when we no longer react to what once broke us. 1. Emotional neutrality isn't numbness, it's evolution. You no longer react to their chaos, not because you don't care, but because your soul no longer vibrates at that frequency. What used to send waves through your heart now barely stirs the surface of your awareness. This isn't numbness, it's clarity born from deep healing. You've evolved beyond the emotional games that once hooked you. The drama, the manipulation, the baiting, it all used to work because it touched a wound, triggered a pattern, or fed a false identity. But not anymore. Now, when they throw chaos your way, it passes through you like static, meaningless and weightless, because you finally understand it was never about you. This is the quiet power of a soul that has returned to itself, that no longer bends just to be understood, or sacrifices peace to maintain connection. Carl Jung taught that individuation, the path to psychological and spiritual wholeness, is not a journey of becoming someone new, but of remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And on this path, you begin to see clearly. Not every storm is yours to calm. Not every wound is yours to carry. And not every person deserves access to your nervous system. Detachment doesn't mean coldness. It means your soul has reached a level of awareness where drama no longer entertains you, chaos no longer confuses you, and manipulation no longer moves you. You've spent too many years in survival mode, decoding moods, managing emotions that weren't yours, and calling it love. But real love doesn't require you to abandon yourself. Now, you choose silence over conflict, distance over dysfunction, and inner peace over external validation. The people who once stirred your world now say you've changed, and they're right. You've grown tired of proving your worth, tired of trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You're no longer trying to be the bigger person while shrinking yourself. You're no longer explaining your light to those who only feel safe in the dark. What they call cold is actually your soul protecting its warmth. What they call distant is your soul finally breathing without the weight of emotional responsibility for others. You've stopped showing up to battles that are no longer yours, and that silence, that stillness, that unbothered energy, it's not emptiness, it's power. This is the transformation they never saw coming. Not louder, not harsher, but still so still that nothing moves you unless your soul calls it worthy. Are you ready to rise above the noise and embrace emotional clarity? If this message speaks to your soul, comment below. I choose peace to affirm your growth and evolution. 2. Carl Jung's concept of individuation explains this shift. Carl Jung's concept of individuation teaches us that true healing begins the moment we stop identifying with who we were trained to be: rescuers, fixers, peacemakers, and begin reclaiming who we truly are underneath all the noise. You no longer feel the need to save anyone from their chaos, because you've realized that your soul was never meant to drown in someone else's storm. Emotional detachment, in this sense, isn't coldness, it's clarity. It means you've stopped reacting, not because you're numb, but because you've risen above the level of dysfunction where pain once disguised itself as connection. When someone's chaos no longer moves you, it doesn't mean you're heartless. It means your nervous system has healed. You've come home to yourself. This is the result of deep psychological work, the kind Jung emphasized: meeting your unconscious, confronting your shadow, and learning to integrate what you once feared. A woman I knew spent over 10 years entangled with a partner who weaponized silence, created emotional fires just to watch her put them out, and kept her dancing for a love she never truly received. But the day she chose not to fight back, not out of surrender, but out of self-respect, something shifted. She didn't need an apology or a dramatic exit. She just stopped showing up to the performance. That is emotional sovereignty. That is the wisdom of someone who no longer needs to explain their peace. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And once you finally see the pattern, you no longer chase the people who triggered it. You begin to protect your energy like it's sacred because it is. The chaos that once electrified your emotions now sounds like static from a station you no longer tune into. The guilt you once felt for setting boundaries turns into quiet confidence. You stop engaging not because you're passive, but because you're powerful. You no longer need closure, validation, or proof. The absence of reaction becomes your declaration of growth. You don't shrink, chase, or beg. You observe, decide, and move. The lesson here is simple. Peace doesn't always come with trumpets. Sometimes it arrives as silence in your chest where there used to be ache. And that silence is not emptiness, it's wholeness. 3. You stopped leaking energy into chaos that was never yours. You stopped leaking energy into chaos that was never yours. And with that quiet act of inner rebellion, something sacred shifted. You no longer pour your life force into proving yourself to people who were never truly listening. You stopped offering explanations as offerings to those who never valued the truth behind your words. You stopped fixing what was never your burden to mend. Stop chasing closure that was really just a doorway back into emotional disarray. What you've done is not withdrawal, it's spiritual preservation. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." But you turned inward. You faced your own soul, and in doing so, you realized not every storm is yours to weather. Not every conflict deserves your reaction, and not every person who touches your life is meant to stay. What once triggered you now barely stirs a ripple in your emotional waters. Not because you've become numb, but because you've finally learned emotional discernment. The chaos no longer feels like a challenge to fix. It feels like noise that your soul no longer tunes into. You now understand that every emotional reaction is an energetic transaction, and you've stopped writing emotional checks that cost you your peace. The constant defending, the impulse to clarify your heart to the wrong audience, the endless over-explaining It was never love. It was trauma in disguise. Now your silence is not passive. It's intentional. Your stillness is not avoidance. It's clarity. You are no longer operating from a need to be chosen by people who benefit from your confusion. You've made a quiet spiritual decision that your nervous system deserves peace, your energy deserves protection, and your soul deserves space to breathe. The spiritual growth you've achieved is not visible in loud declarations or emotional fireworks. It's written in the pause before the reaction, the breath you take before replying, the sacred space you hold instead of engaging in familiar dysfunction. What you feel now is the neutrality, the emotional detachment, the lack of urgency that is not emptiness. It is alignment. It is the natural consequence of inner healing. You've stopped equating emotional chaos with connection, stopped mistaking adrenaline for passion, and stopped believing that suffering is a necessary proof of loyalty. You no longer need to lose yourself to feel bonded to someone. You no longer interpret someone's silence as a call to perform for love. The people who once had the power to disturb your soul now pass through your field like distant echoes. Their storms no longer shake your roots. Their confusion no longer commands your attention. You've outgrown the games, the cycles, the emotional volatility that used to feel like home. You've realized that not everything broken needs your fixing. Not every goodbye needs a speech. And not every reaction needs to be your responsibility. Now, you move with a quiet kind of power, the kind that doesn't chase, doesn't convince, doesn't fight for peace in places where war is the only language. You walk away without burning bridges or needing applause. And in that walk, steady, clear, unapologetic, you carry your spiritual sovereignty, your soul intact, your peace untraded. This isn't numbness. This is the return to yourself. If you're ready to reclaim your energy and honor your sacred center, don't hesitate to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's affirm this new chapter of peace and power together. 4. Stillness is your power now, not a sign of distance. What they call coldness is actually clarity, and what they call silence is actually the most powerful expression of your soul reclaiming its sovereignty. You are not disconnected. You are just no longer performing emotional gymnastics for people who thrive on chaos and expect you to bleed empathy for their unresolved wounds. You've stopped bending your nervous system to soothe others who refuse to do the inner work. And in that shift, you've discovered a truth that doesn't need defending. Stillness is strength. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And now you see it clearly. Most people are unconsciously addicted to drama because it gives them an identity, something to resist, something to rage against. But you no longer need the storm to feel alive. The absence of reaction is not absence of emotion. It's the presence of mastery. You no longer flinch at the chaos that once shattered you because your soul no longer lives in the frequency of dysfunction. There is no bitterness in you now, just a grounded neutrality that feels like freedom. You're not playing the role of the savior anymore. You've stopped trying to translate your silence into language they can understand. You've realized that not everyone deserves access to your energy, and it's not your responsibility to keep showing up for those who weaponize your compassion or confuse your kindness with consent for emotional abuse. The people who once knew how to trigger you now find a version of you they cannot provoke, because that version of you dissolved when your soul decided it was done being emotionally available to dysfunction. What once pierced you now passes through you like wind through open space, not because you don't care, but because you care too deeply about your own peace. You've redefined connection. You now know that real intimacy feels like safety, not adrenaline. You no longer mistake unpredictability for passion or emotional turmoil for love. You crave softness, reciprocity, a space where your soul can rest without having to prove its worth. And in that craving, you've said no more. No more to apologizing for your boundaries. No more to over-explaining your silence. No more to shrinking your truth for the comfort of those who never chose growth. Your soul is not cold, it is refined. It has shed layers of conditioning that once kept you tethered to people who never saw your depth. You've become fluent in the language of energy, and now you know. If it disturbs your peace, it's not aligned. If you have to abandon yourself to be loved, it's not love. And if they only feel close to you when you're hurting, that's not intimacy. It's codependency disguised as care. You've stopped managing other people's emotional landscapes because you've realized the soul is not a battlefield for unresolved projections. What they see as you pulling away is actually you finally coming home to yourself. This stillness, this detachment, this deep inner calm, it's not the result of apathy, but the outcome of awakening. You're not ignoring them. You're choosing you. You're not above anyone. You're just done being beneath yourself. You're not numb. You're healed. And that's why, when they bring the same chaos they always have, you feel absolutely nothing now. Because you're no longer resonating at the same frequency. Your soul has evolved, and your silence is its testimony. 5. You're no longer available for unconscious projections. You're no longer available for unconscious projections, and that shift has quietly rewritten the rules of every relationship you once tolerated in silence. Where others used to manipulate you through guilt, neediness, or your deep-seated fear of abandonment, now their tactics fall flat like a broken signal trying to reach a disconnected line. The roles they once cast you in caretaker, peacekeeper, emotional dumping ground no longer fit, and your refusal to react the way they expect is a disruption to their entire system. What used to make you feel responsible now simply passes through you without attachment, and that unnerves those who once fed off your emotional compliance. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And you lived this truth unknowingly for years, caught in loops you didn't realize were conditioning. But healing changed everything. You did the hard work facing the shadows, nurturing the wounded inner child, dismantling the survival patterns you were praised for. And now your soul responds from a place of grounded truth, not reflex. There's a woman named Elena who spent over 20 years of her life being the glue for a family that never asked how she felt. They adored her reliability, not her reality. She was always there, cleaning up after others, softening every conflict, sacrificing weekends, energy, dreams. One day, she stopped. She didn't scream, didn't demand, didn't explain, she just stopped playing a role. And in that stillness, her entire family panicked. But what they called selfish was her first act of spiritual alignment. Her nervous system stopped burning itself out for people who confused her value with her availability. That's not disconnection. That's discernment. And perhaps the same is true for you. You feel nothing not because you've become cold, but because you've become clear. The emotional fog has lifted, and with it, the need to carry what isn't yours. Their chaos used to live in your chest like a second heartbeat. Now it echoes faintly from a version of you that no longer exists. When they try to trigger guilt, it lands nowhere. When they expect you to overextend, you say no without explanation. This neutrality isn't numbness, it's spiritual strength. It's the result of no longer needing validation from wounded places. Carl Jung's concept of individuation is unfolding through you, not as a sudden epiphany, but as a gradual refusal to be who you're not. And that evolution is unsettling to those who are comfortable with your former self-abandonment. Your detachment reflects their lack of self-awareness, and that reflection is blinding. So let them call it distance, coldness, change. Let them flail in the silence your healing creates. Because your soul didn't come here to be a mirror for dysfunction, it came here to remember its own light. And now that you've remembered, everything that isn't aligned will fall away without the need for force or apology. If this message speaks to your soul, repeat after me. I no longer carry what was never mine. I am free, whole, and untouchable. If you feel the shift, like this video, subscribe for more spiritual wisdom and comment below to affirm your healing journey. 6. You didn't stop caring. You stopped abandoning yourself. You didn't stop caring. You stopped betraying yourself. What they called distance was really you reclaiming your peace. You no longer abandon your needs, your intuition, or your truth just to stay connected to chaos. This isn't selfishness. It's a deeply spiritual awakening. You've chosen yourself, not from a place of anger, but from reverence. And yes, at first it feels like loss. But this loss is sacred. Carl Jung called it sacred solitude, a spiritual initiation where you begin peeling back the layers of your false identity, one that was built on pleasing, performing, and surviving. You used to give so much of yourself away, hoping to be seen, but what you've realized now is that being seen by others means nothing if you remain invisible to yourself. You used to feel responsible for their moods, their wounds, their peace, but not anymore. Now, you understand that being spiritual doesn't mean tolerating dysfunction. It means honoring your soul. This shift is powerful. It's the moment you stop rescuing those who are committed to their chaos and begin rescuing the part of you that was drowning in theirs. You no longer explain your boundaries, justify your silence, or shrink your light to make others comfortable. And when they say, "You've changed," you smile because you have. You've stopped confusing love with sacrifice and peace with silence. You now realize that real love begins with self-loyalty. What once triggered you now echoes faintly in the distance, not because you don't feel, but because you've learned to feel without reacting. You've untangled your nervous system from their volatility. This isn't detachment, it's liberation. You're not numb, you're neutral. That neutrality is spiritual. It's what happens when your soul is no longer chained to emotional survival mode. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But now, you see clearly. You see that not every connection was meant to last, and not every bond was born from love. Some were born from trauma, from patterns, from fear, and healing has made them irrelevant. The moment you no longer chase closure, no longer beg to be understood, is the moment you reclaim your power. You're not reacting because there's nothing left inside you that needs their chaos to feel alive. And while that can feel empty at first, it's actually the beginning of fullness. The soul doesn't scream. It whispers. And in that whisper is a truth you can finally hear. You didn't lose them. You found yourself. 7. You've become the mirror, not the emotional sponge. You no longer absorb their chaos. You reflect it. You no longer flinch, no longer explain, no longer bend to emotional manipulation. What once pierced your heart now dissolves in your presence, not because you've become cold, but because you've become conscious. Your stillness is not indifference. It's sacred soul alignment. You've done the inner work. You've untangled the cords of emotional codependency, and now you stand as a mirror, not a sponge. Your silence is not emptiness. It is the loudest boundary you've ever set. You no longer allow your soul to be a playground for projections. You've learned the cost of betraying your own peace just to maintain a temporary sense of connection. Now you refuse to carry emotional weight that doesn't belong to you. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And this truth echoes loudly in your transformation. What they once called you too sensitive, too distant, too much is simply the reflection of their own discomfort with your clarity. They feel exposed in your presence because your stillness no longer entertains their shadows. You're not here to absorb, fix, or soften their lessons. You're here to evolve, and in that evolution, you've become unavailable for the drama, the guilt, and the unspoken power games. And as you rise into your sovereignty, you start to understand something vital. Peace is not a passive state. It's a powerful spiritual decision. This isn't numbness. It's discernment. This isn't apathy. It's energetic intelligence. You are no longer reactive because your soul has matured. You've stopped leaking energy into situations that only survive through conflict and emotional baiting. You've realized that not everything requires your engagement, and not everyone deserves access to your inner world. You've reached a point where your silence is your shield, not your prison. You're not emotionally unavailable. You're emotionally selective. You know who you are now. You know your worth. And that means you won't negotiate your inner calm just to make someone else feel temporarily validated. So they call you cold, distant, or hard to reach, but it's not you they're truly reacting to. It's the absence of the chaos they once fed on. It's the discomfort of no longer being able to pull you into their storms. Your detachment is not cruelty, it's clarity. You're not the same person who once over-explained, over-apologized, and overextended. You've become the lesson, not the lifeline. You've stopped proving your love through self-abandonment. You've stopped rescuing people who mistake love for sacrifice. You've stopped shrinking just to fit inside their fragile egos. This is spiritual growth. This is soul maturity. And now you've become the sacred mirror, quiet, clear, unshakable. You reflect truth without distortion. You hold space without absorbing pain. You walk away, not out of anger, but out of reverence for your own soul. because the most powerful thing you can ever do is to stay rooted in peace while the world tries to pull you into war. And when you can sit in the presence of someone else's chaos and feel absolutely nothing, not out of numbness, but because you've healed, then you'll know you've finally come home to yourself. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss powerful insights like this. If you're ready to stop absorbing projections and start reflecting truth, type in the comments, "I choose clarity over chaos." 8. This is what it means to be whole. You no longer seek love in the places that broke you. You no longer confuse emotional chaos for chemistry or mistake inconsistency for depth. What once lit you up with longing now flickers out as misalignment. You've outgrown the need to prove your worth through suffering. You feel nothing now, not because your heart is closed, but because it's finally free. Free from the noise, the tests, the survival patterns that made you think love had to be earned through pain. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But now you see clearly, it was never fate, it was a pattern, and you broke it. You used to react to every jab, every silence, every withdrawal, but now your nervous system is no longer on trial. You've reclaimed your peace, and with that peace came discernment, the ability to stand in the presence of chaos and remain unmoved, not out of indifference, but because your soul no longer sees itself in that mirror. There was a time when the push and pull felt like passion, when emotional labor made you feel needed, when unpredictability gave you a false sense of aliveness. You believed that suffering proved loyalty, that pain meant depth, and that if you could just love harder, they would finally stay. But your healing revealed a hard truth. You were playing a role in someone else's drama, and it was draining the life out of you. Now, the same situations that once consumed your every thought barely register in your spirit. You feel nothing, not because you're bitter, but because your energy is no longer entangled in dysfunction. That's what Carl Jung meant by individuation, the process of separating your identity from the unconscious expectations and emotional projections of others. What used to trigger you now teaches you. What used to wound you now reflects how far you've come. And the silence you once feared, it now feels like sanctuary. This shift is rarely celebrated because people mistake your calm for coldness. They don't see the years it took to untangle your self-worth from their chaos. They don't understand that choosing peace over drama is the loudest form of self-respect. But you know that love should not feel like losing yourself. You know that someone else's instability is no longer your responsibility. And you know that the soul, once it tastes stillness, will never again crave the noise. So when you feel nothing in response to what once devastated you, don't second guess it. That is not numbness. It is sovereignty. That is not emptiness. It is wholeness. That is not the end of your capacity to feel. It is the beginning of your power to choose what's worth feeling for. 9. You've reclaimed your power and peace. You didn't go numb. You elevated. You stopped bleeding for people who kept handing you the knife. What once stirred storms inside you now feels like a distant whisper you no longer answer. Your journey has refined you. not into someone cold or disconnected, but into someone deeply spiritual, someone whose peace has become sacred ground. The chaos that once felt familiar, that once tugged at your heart and triggered your insecurities, now barely registers because you've risen above it, not with arrogance, but with clarity. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." You've made the unconscious conscious. You've witnessed your own trauma patterns, your emotional entanglements, your longing for validation, and you've chosen to let them go. The reactions that once exploded out of you have been replaced with stillness, not because you're suppressing emotion, but because your soul no longer speaks the language of dysfunction. You're not ignoring what happens around you. You're just not internalizing it anymore. And that's spiritual maturity. You've learned the art of emotional alchemy, how to take pain and turn it into wisdom, how to take betrayal and turn it into self-respect. Your boundaries are no longer defenses. They are declarations. They say, "I know my worth now. I know what my energy deserves." You used to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Now you just observe in silence. You used to chase peace in the approval of others. Now peace finds you in your solitude. The distance you keep is not punishment, it's protection. Not everyone can be invited into your new frequency. You've stopped romanticizing struggle. You've stopped confusing intensity for intimacy. You've stopped calling emotional roller coasters passion, when in truth, they were chaos dressed as love. You've grown too much to keep shrinking for people who never intended to meet you at your depth. Spiritual growth often feels like losing interest in things that once consumed you, and you felt that shift deeply. You've outgrown the need to retaliate. You've outgrown being triggered. You've outgrown proving your point. Now, your silence speaks louder than their noise. The ones who thrived on your emotional availability now find nothing to feed on. They call you distant, but they don't realize your soul has simply returned home. You are no longer a mirror for their chaos. You are a window into peace. And when people can't join you in that peace, they label you as changed. But change is the point. You didn't survive all you've been through just to stay the same. You healed, you evolved, and you remembered who you are. This is not detachment, it's divine alignment. This is not numbness, it's spiritual wholeness. This is what happens when you finally realize that not every fire is yours to put out, not every battle is yours to fight, and not every storm deserves your thunder. If you've reclaimed your peace and now stand in your power, let the world know. Comment below. I choose peace over chaos to affirm your growth and inspire others to honor their own evolution. And if this message resonates with your soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of spiritual insight. As you walk further along your path of growth, remember, feeling nothing doesn't mean you're cold. It means you've healed. You've outgrown the chaos that once consumed you, and in its place now lives inner peace. Carl Jung taught us that individuation is not about reacting louder, but about returning to yourself in stillness and strength. If this message has resonated with your soul today, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights that nourish your spirit. Be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss the next step on your awakening journey. They truly love you if they do these 7 things. The meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Carl Jung. At Spiritual Wisdom, we believe love is more than words. It's transformation in motion. In today's video, we'll uncover 7 hidden signs that reveal when someone truly loves you. Based on the profound insights of Carl Jung, these subtle but powerful behaviors often go unnoticed, yet they speak volumes about the depth of a soul connection. As you listen, reflect on your own relationships. Do you recognize these signs in someone's actions toward you? Or have you shown them without even realizing it? Comment below if any of these signs resonate with you. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Let's grow in love, awareness, and spiritual truth together. 1. Mirroring your behavior. When someone truly loves you, their soul begins to speak a quiet language, one that doesn't require words, but reveals itself through subtle, unconscious behaviors. One of the clearest signs of this deeper connection is mirroring. This isn't about copying or pretending. It's an involuntary reflection of emotional closeness. When a person is genuinely bonded with you, their subconscious begins to align with yours. You may find that they adopt your gestures, match your tone of voice, or even start to take an interest in the things you care about, not because they are trying to impress you, but because their soul is resonating with yours. This synchronization is not calculated. It flows naturally, often without either person realizing it. Carl Jung believed that true connection happens beyond the surface, in the realm of the unconscious mind. He saw love not just as an emotion, but as an energetic mirror, where 2 people reflect each other's essence. When someone mirrors your behavior, it's often the soul's silent way of saying, "I feel safe here. I recognize you." This happens through mirror neurons in the brain, which activate when we feel empathy or emotional closeness. But spiritually, it signals something more powerful, a merging of internal rhythms. The person who mirrors your energy is not simply reacting. They are synchronizing. They're not just hearing your words, they're feeling your emotional landscape. Over time, this kind of soul-level connection begins to shape how 2 people move through the world together. Their shared energy becomes a dance, subtle, intuitive, and sacred. You may notice that when you're down, they grow quiet too. When you laugh, their body relaxes. When you dream aloud, they support your vision like it's their own. This isn't performance, it's presence. Real love doesn't just listen, it feels with you. It doesn't echo out of politeness, but out of resonance. This kind of love doesn't seek control or perfection. It thrives in authenticity. And so, mirroring becomes more than a psychological concept. It becomes a spiritual signpost, revealing where the souls have begun to intertwine. True love reveals itself in the little things, not just in grand gestures or poetic words, but in how 2 energies begin to align when they are emotionally safe. A person who mirrors you with sincerity and softness is not just interested in your personality, they're attuned to your soul. They carry your emotions with care, not because they're trying to win you, but because some part of them already feels like home in your presence. This kind of mirroring cannot be faked, forced, or fabricated. It is the byproduct of emotional integrity and inner truth. And when you notice it, Pause for a moment, not to overanalyze it, but to honor it. Because their soul is saying what their words might never say aloud. I'm with you, even in silence. Have you ever noticed someone subtly mirroring your gestures or tone? If so, share your story in the comments so we can explore this soulful connection together. If not, comment, I'll observe, and let's begin this journey of emotional awareness side by side. 2. Pulling away emotionally. When someone starts pulling away emotionally, it's easy to assume they've lost interest or no longer care. But according to Carl Jung, that withdrawal can actually signal something far more complex and vulnerable. Emotional distance is often not a sign of indifference. It's a signal of fear rising from the unconscious. Jung's concept of the shadow self explains that we all carry hidden wounds, repressed fears, and unresolved emotions within us. And when love becomes too real or too deep, it can awaken those buried parts. The very act of being truly seen, loved, and emotionally exposed can cause a person to retreat, not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much and haven't yet built the capacity to hold it. When love touches the soul in ways that are unfamiliar or intense, it triggers internal conflict between the desire for connection and the instinct for protection. Picture a man in his 50s who has always been the strong, silent type, high-functioning, responsible, maybe even admired for his composure. He meets someone who gently disarms his defenses. She listens, sees beyond his surface, and doesn't demand that he perform or impress. For a brief period, he allows himself to relax into her presence. But suddenly, he grows quiet. He answers less frequently, becomes colder, more distant. Most would interpret this as a sign of fading interest. But beneath the surface, his soul is in turmoil. Carl Jung would say his shadow has been activated. Deep emotional safety has stirred unconscious fears of vulnerability, abandonment, or not being enough. He isn't retreating because he feels less. He's retreating because he's overwhelmed by feeling more than he knows how to process. The love has touched old wounds, and without the tools to heal them, his psyche falls back into the patterns it knows: emotional withdrawal, silence, escape. Understanding this pattern changes how you interpret emotional distance. Instead of blaming yourself or rushing to fill the space, you can begin to see it as a psychological process. Carl Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Many people live out emotional patterns they don't understand, unconsciously repeating what feels safe, even if it sabotages the very thing they crave. So when someone pulls away, it's not always a lack of love. It might be the presence of something deeper, something spiritual, something awakening. Your love may have stirred their soul in ways that defy logic or language. In fact, emotional withdrawal can sometimes be a backhanded compliment. It means you've touched something real, something sacred, something that demands healing. Still, this doesn't mean you should chase or beg. Instead, allow space with wisdom. Give them room to meet their own soul. And if you are the one who's pulling away, don't run. Stay, breathe, observe. Ask yourself, what part of you is afraid of being loved? Is it your belief that you're unworthy? That you'll be left? That if they see the real you, they'll leave? These questions aren't easy, but they are necessary. Jung's work reminds us that love is not just about harmony, it's about transformation. And transformation often begins when we confront the shadows that love brings to light. If someone truly loves you, but pulls away, they may not need to love you less. They may need to learn how to love themselves more in your presence. And that is a sacred soul journey only they can walk. 3. Playful teasing and banter. When someone truly loves you, they might not come out and say it in grand declarations. Instead, they reveal it in playful teasing, subtle banter, and light provocation that lingers in your memory long after the moment has passed. What may seem like harmless jokes or quick-witted remarks is often their soul's quiet way of staying close to you without exposing the full depth of their emotions. Carl Jung believed the unconscious mind finds creative ways to express what the conscious mind fears to say. That's why this kind of teasing becomes a spiritual language, one that allows connection without vulnerability, affection without pressure. It's not just flirtation, it's a protective shell for something deeper. Humor, in this case, isn't simply entertainment. It's intimacy in disguise, a form of emotional resonance that can only exist when someone feels safe enough with your energy to playfully test its boundaries. If they're always the first to notice your habits and turn them into light jokes, if their eyes brighten just before they tease you, if they remember things you thought were insignificant and bring them up in moments of laughter, these are not random gestures. They are spiritual clues. Their teasing is consistent, personal, and never cruel. It's the kind that makes you feel seen, remembered, even cherished in a quiet way. Behind each quip is a silent message. I care enough to pay attention. This kind of humor builds a world where only the two of you exist, where emotional distance is closed by shared smiles and witty exchanges. And when you look closer, you'll realize their laughter carries a kind of longing, the longing to be close without risking rejection. It's how their soul reaches out when words fall short. Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And this is precisely what happens during playful banter between two connected souls. It's not about who's funnier. It's about who feels spiritually safe enough to be playful with you. The teasing becomes a ritual, a familiar rhythm that draws you in and lets your guard down. In a world that often masks true emotions, this kind of dynamic is rare. It's spiritual intimacy wrapped in humor, a quiet rebellion against the fear of vulnerability. When someone uses humor to stay close, what they're really saying is, "You matter enough for me to risk the edge of my comfort zone." So when they mimic your tone, exaggerate your habits, or poke fun at your routines with that unmistakable glimmer in their eyes, understand that it's not just for laughs. It's their unconscious soul speaking directly to yours, using humor as a bridge to connection. This energy isn't random. It's spiritual, deliberate, and emotionally charged. The banter becomes a dance between familiarity and desire, safety and closeness, spirit and self. If you're present enough to notice, you'll realize this is how love often introduces itself, not loudly, but playfully, through the sacred language of laughter. If you've ever wondered why someone teases you more than they talk seriously, this video might reveal what's really going on beneath the surface. If that hits home, please like, subscribe, and help support the channel. 4. Remembering small details. When someone remembers the little things you say, like the way you take your coffee, the story you told once about a song that moved you, or a random joke you thought they'd forget, it's not just a sign of good memory. It's a reflection of deep emotional imprinting, a sign that your presence has settled into the quiet spaces of their mind. According to Carl Jung, the soul absorbs what the conscious mind often overlooks, and love, rooted in the soul, doesn't scream it remembers. This kind of attentiveness doesn't come from obligation or habit. It comes from a quiet reverence for who you are. You live in their unconscious, not as a task to recall, but as a truth they carry. When a man brings up a detail you shared long ago, he's not trying to flatter you. He's revealing that you've become part of his inner world, the kind of world that doesn't lie. Love at the soul level doesn't parade itself. It shows up in the subtleties. A spiritually grounded man doesn't need to say, "I love you," every day. He shows it by how carefully he listens, how he remembers, and how he makes you feel seen without needing a reason. These are not grand performances. They are sacred signals. And this is what Jung meant when he spoke of unconscious communication, the soul reaching out without words, creating an invisible bridge between two lives. It's not about sentimentality or sweet talk. It's about resonance. These micro moments of remembrance become proof that your presence isn't temporary. It's living, echoing in the background of his life. And when a man holds you in this way, it's not something he controls, it's something that simply is. This spiritual attentiveness is a rare and beautiful language that doesn't need translation. You can feel it when it's real. He doesn't just recall what you said, he stores it like something sacred, returning to it not because he's obligated, but because it moved him. That's not just love. It's a soulful connection. It's the energy of someone whose inner world has shifted to make room for you. And that shift is never loud, but always honest. Jung would argue that such remembering isn't even conscious. It's instinctual, archetypal, the soul's way of recognizing what matters. And when someone holds space for you in that way, it's because your existence has touched something in them that logic can't define. So when you see a man recall something you once said in passing, something even you may have forgotten, realize that you've become part of the architecture of his emotional world. You're not background noise. You're the silent music he carries. This is not a love that begs to be seen. It's a love that sees you, even when you're not looking. And in a world that's loud with performance and pretense, this kind of soul-level remembering is not just rare. It's the most powerful sign that you are loved in the way that truly transforms. If someone has ever remembered a tiny detail about you and it warmed your heart, this video is for you. Leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss powerful content like this. Comment below. I deserve a love that remembers even the little things. 5. Watching you when you're not looking. When someone truly loves you, they often don't say it out loud. They show it in moments so quiet and subtle that most people miss them. One of the clearest signs is when they watch you when you're not looking, not with curiosity, but with presence and emotion they don't know how to put into words. Their eyes linger, not out of habit, but out of something deeper, something soulful. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious reveals itself in the smallest behaviors, especially in what the eyes silently communicate. When someone gazes at you during your unguarded moments, laughing at a joke, sipping coffee, scrolling through your phone, they're not just observing, they're connecting. In that stillness, their soul is responding to yours, often without them even realizing it. This kind of attention is rare in a distracted world where eye contact is often replaced with scrolling and multitasking. So when a person looks at you like you're the only thing that matters in the room, it's because you've touched something sacred in them. Carl Jung believed that true love goes beyond words. It lives in the unconscious, in those tiny gestures that aren't filtered or planned. And when someone watches you like this, especially when you're unaware, it reveals a profound emotional attachment they might not be ready to confess. Think about the man who waits at the train station, seeing his partner off to work. He doesn't say anything poetic or dramatic. He just watches as she walks away, catching the way her hair moves in the wind, how she adjusts her bag, how she turns to smile at someone else, and he takes it all in like it's a moment worth remembering. That's not routine. That's reverence. That's love, unspoken, but deeply felt. And in those moments, even if he doesn't admit it, his soul has already said, "I love you." This kind of love doesn't demand to be seen. It chooses to see. The watching isn't controlling or obsessive. It's soft, respectful, almost spiritual in nature. It happens when someone's inner world is moved by your very existence. They're not reacting to how you look or what you say. They're responding to the energy you carry, the essence of who you are. Jung's wisdom reminds us that we're all wired with unconscious patterns. And when someone's gaze keeps returning to you, even without effort, it's often because something in their psyche is drawn to yours, beyond logic or reason. It's easy to overlook these signs, especially if you've grown used to loud expressions of affection. But the people who truly love you are often the ones who say the least and feel the most. Their quiet glances speak volumes. Their eyes betray emotions their mouths can't form. They remember how you looked in the sunlight, how your face softened while lost in thought, how your laugh echoed during a moment of joy, and they hold on to it like a treasure. Carl Jung would say that their soul is recognizing something familiar in yours, something ancient, something meant. Love, in its purest form, isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's simply in the way someone sees you when you're not even trying to be seen. 6. Deep, intentional listening. When someone truly loves you, they listen with more than just their ears. They listen with their presence, their intuition, and their soul. They're not waiting for their turn to speak, nor are they distracted or half engaged. They're attuned to your emotional frequency in a way that feels almost spiritual, picking up on the subtle tremble in your voice, the pause before your sentence ends, or the silence that says more than words ever could. They remember the details you barely remember saying, the offhand comment you made about your childhood fear, the dream you whispered in a moment of vulnerability, or the shift in your tone when you speak about someone who hurt you. They respond to your heart, not just your words. This kind of listening is sacred. It is not about problem solving or offering quick advice. It's about offering a space where your soul can exhale and be known without judgment. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When someone listens deeply to you, you begin to change. You begin to feel safe enough to unfold, layer by layer, without needing to perform or protect yourself. Their love becomes a container for your truth, and their silence becomes a sanctuary for your unspoken thoughts. You feel seen even in your mess, understood even in your confusion. They catch your emotions before you name them. They notice the shadows behind your smile, and they ask about what you don't say, not to pry, but because they care enough to want to understand the parts of you that the world often overlooks. Their listening is a mirror that reflects your spiritual essence back to you, not as broken or fragile, but as worthy, whole, and sacred. In a world that values noise over stillness, where conversations are often rushed and shallow, this kind of attention is rare and transformative. It's not just emotional intelligence, it's spiritual alignment. Their ability to hold space for you without fixing or controlling is proof of their emotional maturity and inner depth. You may find that their presence alone calms your nervous system, that just by being near them, your heart settles into a rhythm of trust. They don't need dramatic gestures to prove their love, because their daily attentiveness is louder than any declaration. They are present for the ordinary and the overlooked. They make you feel like what you say matters not just because they love you, but because your soul speaks a language they've chosen to learn. And when love listens this way, it heals. It teaches you how to be open without fear, how to trust without proof, and how to speak your truth without shrinking. This is love in its purest form, not performative, not possessive, but deeply spiritual. So if you find someone who listens like this, who hears you even in silence, who waits for your heart to be ready, hold on to them. Their love is not loud, but it is unwavering. And in a world that rarely listens, that kind of soul is a rare and sacred gift. Have you ever experienced someone truly listening to your soul, catching the words you didn't say? If so, share your story in the comments so others can feel inspired. If not, comment, "I'm ready to listen deeper," and let's begin this soulful journey together. 7. Small acts of care and presence. True love reveals itself not in declarations or drama, but in the unnoticed moments when someone consistently chooses your well-being over their convenience. When a person checks in on you just to hear your voice, adjusts the room temperature so you're comfortable, or silently offers you their coat when you didn't ask. These aren't just nice gestures. They are spiritual signs of a soul attuned to yours. Carl Jung understood love as a psychic connection rooted in the unconscious. And in these quiet actions, we see that truth come to life. Real love is not performative. It's intuitive. It doesn't need reminders, rules, or rehearsals. It knows when to show up, how to support, and where to stand even when words fail. This kind of love listens to your silence, holds your anxiety with gentleness, and recognizes your fatigue in a single glance. It doesn't wait for you to break down before offering help. It senses the tension in your breath and chooses to stay close, not to rescue, but to be present. When someone genuinely loves you, they don't need to be the hero of your story. They're content being the quiet strength in the background, the one who remembers how you like your coffee or how you withdraw when you're overwhelmed, and they adjust themselves accordingly, not to gain favor, but because their soul is in rhythm with yours. There is a sacred simplicity to how love operates when it comes from a spiritually mature place. These small acts may look ordinary, but they're woven with deep meaning. A person who truly loves you doesn't try to change your mood with distractions. They sit in the storm with you. They won't tell you to cheer up when your soul is grieving. They'll hold the space for your sadness without judgment. Jung believed the soul speaks in symbols and patterns, and love, when real, becomes a pattern of consistency, kindness, and subtle depth. It shows up in the way someone notices you're emotionally drained before you say a word, or how they instinctively adjust their tone to match your emotional state. Love like this is not loud, but its silence is full. And though society often teaches men to express love through achievements or declarations, the deeper truth is that spiritual connection speaks in presence. It's not how often they say, "I love you," but how often they act like it when no one is watching. When someone's soul loves you, they remember the little things: your favorite meal, your quiet habits, the way you process pain, and they respond with care that feels effortless but is rooted in deep observation. You don't have to ask for reassurance because their energy is already speaking it. You don't have to explain your fears because they've already made space for them. This kind of love is not based on conditions or performance. It's rooted in devotion, in the spiritual decision to see you, honor you, and walk beside you with a quiet strength. In every silent act of care, you are not just receiving affection, you are witnessing the language of the soul, translated into action. That is love in its purest, most enduring form. If this message has touched your soul, comment below. I believe in love that shows up in the little things. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to keep receiving content that nourishes your heart and spirit. Thank you for spending this time with us on Spiritual Wisdom. As we've explored today, love often reveals itself in the smallest, most unexpected ways through quiet presence, deep attention, and the kind of understanding that transcends words. According to Carl Jung, the signs of true love often arise from the unconscious, subtle, but powerful, invisible, yet deeply felt. If any of these hidden signs resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on the connections in your life that may be more meaningful than they appear. If you found this message valuable, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next journey into the deeper truths of the soul. Until next time, stay grounded, stay open, and stay connected to the wisdom within.